The blind date was empty, until his twin little boys appeared and said, "Our daddy's sorry it's late." She thought she'd been stood up again. Another empty seat. Another broken hope. But when two little boys appeared, holding hands and smiling, they whispered the words that changed everything. "Our daddy's sorry he's late. Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends." If you're tuned in and ready to dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So, let's get started. The rain outside whispered against the glass, tracing trembling lines like tears that refused to fall. Inside Café Viella, the air was warm, scented with cinnamon and roasted beans. A string of fairy lights hung lazily above, glowing like promises that never learned to last. At the corner table sat Lena, 32, dressed in soft beige and quiet disappointment. She stirred her cappuccino for the fourth time, though the foam had long dissolved. Her phone lit up. Another text from her best friend. "You'll love him, Lena. Just be patient. He's probably parking." She forced a smile at the screen. Probably parking. That same phrase had been her comfort, her curse, her tiny hope that never aged well. Minutes passed. The waitress refilled her water with a sympathetic smile. The same kind that said, "You've been here too long, sweetheart." Lena looked toward the door again. Nothing. The truth settled like dust. She'd been stood up. Her reflection in the cafe window met her gaze. Lonely, familiar, resigned. She thought of deleting her dating app again, swearing off love for good this time. She'd promised herself this would be her last blind date before surrendering to solitude. But tonight felt crueler than usual. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was because she'd actually hoped this one might be different. She reached for her purse, her eyes misty, when a child's voice piped from the doorway. "Excuse me, miss?" Lena looked up. Two small boys stood just inside the cafe, dripping from the rain, clutching each other's hands. They were maybe 6 years old, twins, with the same curly brown hair and oversized sweaters. "Are you Miss Lena?" one asked, his eyes wide with both courage and caution. Lena blinked, startled. "Yes, I am." The second boy grinned shyly and said, "Our daddy's sorry he's late." The cafe seemed to still. Even the hum of the espresso machine softened. Lena's heart stuttered, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Their father? Her date had kids? Before she could respond, the boys stepped closer, one holding out a damp paper napkin with careful handwriting. "So sorry. Got caught in traffic with the boys. Please don't leave. Ethan." The name hit her like a small, warm shock. Ethan. He'd mentioned he was a single dad in his profile, but somehow seeing proof of that standing before her made everything real. The twins looked up at her expectantly, small puddles forming at their shoes. She smiled, unsure why her throat felt so tight. "Well," she said softly, "I suppose I can wait a little longer." The boys' faces lit up like twin lanterns. "He said you'd say that," one whispered. Lena laughed, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in a while. Something inside her shifted. The table didn't feel so empty anymore. Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside Café Viella, warmth began to rise again. Quiet, hesitant, and full of promise. If you were Lena, would you have stayed or walked away? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your heart on this one. The twins shuffled nervously near the table, dripping rainwater onto the tiled floor. The older one, Lena guessed by a minute or two, was trying very hard to look grown up. The younger kept stealing glances at the glass case of pastries near the counter. "Would you boys like to sit?" Lena asked, motioning to the empty chair across from her. They hesitated, then climbed up side by side, their wet shoes barely touching the floor. One swung his legs, The other straightened his back like a little gentleman. The waitress approached, smiling. "Can I get you something, sweethearts?" The boys looked at each other before saying in unison, "Hot chocolate, please." Lena couldn't help but smile. "2 hot chocolates coming up," the waitress said, winking at her as if to say you've just been adopted into something special. As the boys waited, they started chattering in half sentences. About their dad's car breaking down, about the rain, about how their puppy ate one of Ethan's shoes this morning. Lena listened, laughing softly. The tension in her shoulders melted a little more with every word. "So," she ventured, "your daddy sent you as his little messengers?" The older one nodded solemnly. "He said we had to come say sorry, 'cause he didn't want you to think he forgot." The younger added proudly, "He said you looked nice in your photo. He was scared he'd mess it up." Lena blinked, surprised by a wave of tenderness she didn't expect. She imagined this man, nervous, overwhelmed, but caring enough to send his children first rather than leave her waiting in silence. Her heart softened. Maybe this one really is different. The door chimed again, a gust of cool air sweeping through. Lena turned. There he was, Ethan, tall, with an easy kind of tiredness, his dark hair damp from the rain. His eyes found the twins first. They waved excitedly, and then, slowly, they found her. "Miss Lena?" he asked, voice low, apologetic. "I'm so sorry about this. Everything that could go wrong did." Lena smiled faintly. "You sent quite the welcome committee." He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah. They insisted." The boys were already sipping their hot chocolate like miniature critics. "Daddy, we told her you were nice," one said, chocolate mustache and all. Ethan groaned, laughing. "And now I've got expectations to live up to." Lena gestured to the chair across from her. "You're late but forgiven. Sit down before they drink both your hot chocolates." As he settled into the seat, a soft warmth filled the space between them. Not romantic yet, but human, real, shared. For a few moments they sat in easy silence. The rain continued outside, soft and rhythmic. The twins' giggles danced around them, wrapping the table in something that felt like belonging. Ethan looked up finally, his gaze steady and sincere. "Thank you for waiting." Lena met his eyes. "I almost didn't." Their eyes held for just a second longer than comfort allowed, something unspoken passing between them. And in that small, quiet moment, both realized the night wasn't about a blind date anymore. It was about being seen again after too long in the dark. Have you ever met someone who made you believe in timing again? Share your moment in the comments. Your story might give someone hope tonight. For the first time in months, Lena didn't know what to say. She'd expected awkward conversation, forced politeness, maybe even a polite goodbye after coffee. Not this warmth, not this laughter bubbling up between strangers who felt like something more. Ethan was funny in that understated way, quick to make a self-deprecating joke, always aware of his boys' antics. He talked with his hands, laughed with his eyes, and carried a quiet gravity that made Lena curious. Yet underneath the charm, there was something else. A distance, a shadow. The boys were already sipping their hot chocolate like miniature critics. "Daddy, we told her you were nice," one said, chocolate mustache and all. Ethan groaned, laughing. "And now I've got expectations to live up to." Lena gestured to the chair across from her. "You're late but forgiven. Sit down before they drink both your hot chocolates." As he settled into the seat, a soft warmth filled the space between them. Not romantic yet, but human, real, shared. For a few moments they sat in easy silence. The rain continued outside, soft and rhythmic. The twins' giggles danced around them, wrapping the table in something that felt like belonging. Ethan looked up finally, his gaze steady and sincere. "Thank you for waiting." Lena met his eyes. I almost didn't. Their eyes held for just a second longer than comfort allowed. Something unspoken passing between them. And in that small, quiet moment, both realized the night wasn't about a blind date anymore. It was about being seen again after too long in the dark. Have you ever met someone who made you believe in timing again? Share your moment in the comments. Your story might give someone hope tonight. For the first time in months, Lena didn't know what to say. She'd expected awkward conversation, forced politeness, maybe even a polite goodbye after coffee. Not this warmth, not this laughter bubbling up between strangers who felt like something more. Ethan was funny in that understated way. Quick to make a self-deprecating joke, always aware of his boy's antics. He talked with his hands, laughed with his eyes, and carried a quiet gravity that made Lena curious. Yet underneath the charm, there was something else. A distance, a shadow. When she asked about his work, his face brightened. When she asked about his weekends, he hesitated. When one of the twins mentioned Mommy, a flicker crossed his eyes. Gone too fast, but enough for her to see it. Lena smiled gently, pretending not to notice, but her chest tightened. He's still healing. Ethan noticed the shift in her, too. She wasn't like the others he'd met, the ones who tried to fill silence with words or flirt past pain. Lena listened. She didn't push, and that somehow made it harder to hide. So, she said, tapping the rim of her cup, how long have you been doing this? The whole blind date adventure. He exhaled a small laugh. Adventure's one word for it. Honestly, this is my first. Her brows lifted. First? He nodded, glancing down. I promised my sister I'd try. She said it's time to move on. I wasn't sure I could. The words hung there, delicate as glass. Lena's instinct was to reach out, but she stayed still. She knew that ache, wanting to reach and not knowing if the other person was ready. Well, she said softly, for what it's worth, you're doing better than most. Their eyes met again. Ethan smiled, small and grateful. You too. But inside, both were holding their breath, afraid to let the warmth mean something. The twins interrupted with perfect timing. Daddy, can we get the rainbow cake? Ethan laughed. You two have had enough sugar to fuel a spaceship. Lena giggled, and the tension broke for a heartbeat. Oh, let them. It's raining. Rules don't count on rainy nights. Ethan gave her a look that was half challenge, half surrender. You'll regret that when they're bouncing off the walls. Then you'll owe me another coffee to make up for it, she teased before realizing how it sounded. A beat of silence. Then he smiled. I'd like that. And suddenly, the air changed, lighter, charged, uncertain. For the first time in a long while, Lena felt seen. Not as someone who'd been left behind, but as someone worth staying for. Still, a voice inside whispered, don't get attached. He's just being kind. And across the table, Ethan thought the same. She deserves someone whole. I'm not that yet. They both smiled through it. Two hearts pretending not to shake. Have you ever met someone who felt right but came at the wrong time? Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Lena's place? The rain outside hadn't stopped. In fact, it had deepened into a steady rhythm. A lullaby for the city. The cafe owner dimmed the lights a little, soft jazz humming through the speakers. Dinner hours had crept in unnoticed. The twins, however, noticed everything. Miss Lena, one of them said, tugging her sleeve. Can we sit with you for dinner? Lena blinked. Dinner. Ethan looked up, embarrassed. Boys, I think Miss Lena has other plans. But before he could finish, the younger twin pleaded, please? Daddy never eats with people who smile at his jokes. Lena tried not to laugh. Is that true? Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, smiling sheepishly. They're very observant. Dinner for 4 it is, then, Lena said, handing the waitress the menu. As they ordered grilled cheese for the boys, soup and pasta for the adults, something in the air softened. The earlier tension dissolved into warmth. Lena leaned back, watching the twins argue about which dessert was best, while Ethan listened with half a smile, eyes gleaming with quiet gratitude. "So," she said, stirring her tea, "you're raising them on your own?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah. A lot some days. They keep me going, though." He glanced at the boys, their laughter echoing across the cafe. "They're the best part of me." Lena smiled. "They're lucky to have you." He looked down, modest, almost shy. "Sometimes I'm not sure they are." For the first time in a long while, Lena felt seen. Not as someone who'd been left behind, but as someone worth staying for. Still, a voice inside whispered, "Don't get attached. He's just being kind." And across the table, Ethan thought the same. She deserves someone whole. "I'm not that yet." They both smiled through it, two hearts pretending not to shake. Have you ever met someone who felt right but came at the wrong time? Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Lena's place? The rain outside hadn't stopped. In fact, it had deepened into a steady rhythm, a lullaby for the city. The cafe owner dimmed the lights a little, soft jazz humming through the speakers. Dinner hours had crept in unnoticed. The twins, however, noticed everything. "Miss Lena," one of them said, tugging her sleeve, "can we sit with you for dinner?" Lena blinked. "Dinner?" Ethan looked up, embarrassed. "Boys, I think Miss Lena has other plans." But before he could finish, the younger twin pleaded, "Please? Daddy never eats with people who smile at his jokes." Lena tried not to laugh. "Is that true?" Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, smiling sheepishly. "They're very observant." "Dinner for 4 it is, then," Lena said, handing the waitress the menu. As they ordered grilled cheese for the boys, soup and pasta for the adults, something in the air softened. The earlier tension dissolved into warmth. Lena leaned back, watching the twins argue about which dessert was best, while Ethan listened with half a smile, eyes gleaming with quiet gratitude. "So," she said, stirring her tea, "you're raising them on your own?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah. A lot some days. They keep me going, though." He glanced at the boys, their laughter echoing across the cafe. "They're the best part of me." Lena smiled. "They're lucky to have you." He looked down, modest, almost shy. "Sometimes I'm not sure they are." Something in his tone caught her. She didn't press, but her eyes softened, the way people do when they recognize the same ache in someone else. To change the subject, she asked the twins, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" One answered without hesitation, "A superhero." The other, grinning, added, "A baker, so I can make cake for Miss Lena." Lena burst out laughing, covering her face. Ethan's eyes sparkled, the kind of joy he hadn't felt in years. For the next hour, the table was filled with stories, laughter, and the sound of forks clinking on plates. The boys dipped fries in ketchup and fed her samples like a ritual of friendship. At one point, Lena noticed Ethan watching her, really watching. The flicker of candlelight danced across his face, revealing a man slowly learning how to breathe again. And she realized something: he wasn't broken. He was just scared of breaking again. When the check came, Lena reached for it, but Ethan stopped her. "No," he said gently. "You waited for me. Let me do something right tonight." She hesitated, then smiled. "Okay, but next time, it's on me." Ethan froze just a fraction of a second at her words. Next time. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a flirt. It was hope, disguised as casual conversation. He met her eyes and nodded softly. Next time. As they stepped outside under the awning, rain still pouring, the twins twirled around in puddles, laughing. Lena glanced at Ethan. They're happy. He nodded. Yeah, tonight, they are. And you? She asked. He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. Ask me again next time. Would you have stayed for dinner like Lena did? Or kept your guard up? Tell me below. I love hearing how you'd handle a night like this. By the time dessert came, Café Viella had emptied except for a couple in the far corner and the hum of the espresso machine. The twins were drawing on napkins with borrowed crayons, their laughter soft now, the sugar finally fading. Lena sipped her coffee, letting the warmth settle in her chest. For the first time in a long while she felt comfortable. Not giddy, not nervous, just at ease. Ethan looked the same way, leaning back in his chair, watching his boys with quiet affection. They always want dessert, he said. It was her thing, my wife's. She said every good day should end with something sweet. The words hung there. Her thing. Lena froze slightly, unsure how to respond. His tone wasn't bitter. It was soft, reverent, and filled with something deeper. Grief wrapped in love. I'm sorry, she said gently. He shook his head. Don't be. It's been 3 years. He smiled, but his voice cracked just slightly. They were 2 when she got sick. I still forget sometimes. I'll reach over to tell her something and realize she's not. He stopped. Lena's eyes stung. She wanted to say something comforting, something perfect. But she knew better. Sometimes silence said more than words could. Ethan took a breath. I almost didn't come tonight. I've canceled so many times before. My sister kept saying, you're allowed to be happy again. But it didn't feel right. Not until now. Lena blinked. Not until now? He met her gaze. You remind me of something I forgot. What peace feels like. Her heart twisted. She'd been on dates filled with noise, boasting, and emptiness. But this raw honesty felt heavier and holier. Before she could reply, one of the twins looked up. Daddy, Mommy used to laugh like Miss Lena. The room went quiet. Ethan froze. The twin didn't mean to say anything wrong. It was just truth, simple and unfiltered. The way children carry memories like feathers. Lena's eyes softened. She sounds lovely, she whispered. Ethan looked up, surprised. He didn't die, she continued, her voice steady. He just left. One day we were planning a wedding, the next, nothing. Empty apartment, empty bed, empty table. Ethan's gaze softened, and suddenly the space between them felt like a mirror. 2 people staring at the same kind of emptiness, just painted in different colors. The twins began to doze off in their seats, one leaning against Ethan, the other curled beside Lena, their crayons still clutched in tiny hands. She smiled at the sleeping boy beside her. Guess dessert did its job. Ethan chuckled softly, brushing a hand through his son's hair. Yeah, they always find a way to fall asleep where it's safe. Lena looked up at him, voice barely above a whisper. I think we all do. And for a fleeting second, it felt like the cafe wasn't holding 2 strangers anymore, but 2 souls remembering how to breathe again. Do you believe broken hearts can recognize each other, even before words are spoken? Share your thoughts in the comments. The cafe clock struck 10. Outside, the rain softened into mist. Streetlights shimmered against wet pavement, painting golden reflections that looked like scattered constellations. Inside, the world had grown still. Ethan's boys were asleep, one in his arms, the other still curled against Lena's shoulder. She didn't dare move, afraid to wake him. His small breaths, the weight of his trust, melted something deep inside her. Ethan smiled softly. You've got magic, he said quietly. He never falls asleep with strangers. Lena smiled back. Maybe he knows I'm not really one. He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. You're good with them. Better than I am most days. That's not true. Oh, it is, he said, eyes distant but warm. They deserve more than I can give some days. But when I see them laugh. He trailed off, watching his sons, his voice lowering. I know she's still here somehow. Lena followed his gaze. Love doesn't go away, Ethan. It just changes shape. He looked at her then, really looked. The kind of look that strips away everything unnecessary. You sound like someone who's learned that the hard way. I have. A beat passed, quiet but full. The kind that pulls two people closer without either of them moving. She set her hand on the table, and for a moment, his fingers brushed hers. It wasn't intentional, but neither of them pulled away. The cafe owner began clearing tables softly in the background, humming an old love song. The moment felt suspended, like time had been asked to wait outside in the rain. Lena broke the silence with a faint smile. You know what's funny? I almost didn't come tonight. I told my best friend this was my last date ever. Ethan laughed quietly. And yet, here you are, stuck with a dad and two hot chocolate bandits. I've had worse nights, she teased. He grinned. I'd hope so. For a moment, the world felt simple again. No ghosts, no guilt, no fear. Just two tired souls, a dim cafe, and a pair of dreaming boys who believed in love without needing to explain it. Ethan leaned back, exhaling. This feels peaceful. I didn't think I'd find that again. Lena's eyes softened. You will. You already are. The lights flickered softly as the storm outside thinned to silence. Ethan looked at her hand again, this time not by accident. His fingers brushed hers, deliberate now, gentle, questioning. She didn't move, didn't need to. He smiled, a quiet, almost shy curve of his lips. I don't know where this goes, he admitted. But tonight I don't feel broken. She felt tears prick her eyes. Maybe that's where it starts. For the first time, neither of them filled the silence with words. It wasn't awkward. It was safe. And that safety, fragile and rare, felt more like love than anything either of them had known in years. Sometimes love doesn't rush in. It tiptoes quietly, like this moment. Have you ever felt unexpectedly safe with someone new? Share your story below. The next morning came too quickly. Lena woke to sunlight spilling through her apartment window, soft and pale. She lay there for a long moment, smiling faintly as the memory of last night replayed. Ethan's quiet laughter, the twins' sleepy heads on their shoulders, the warmth that felt almost like belonging. Almost. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Thank you for last night. I haven't felt that kind of peace in a long time. She typed back twice and deleted both messages. Finally, she wrote, Me neither. Maybe coffee again sometime? Her thumb hovered over send. She pressed it. And then she waited. Hours passed. No reply. By evening, doubt began to creep in. Maybe she'd read too much into it. Maybe he'd just been polite. Maybe the boys had been the real magic, not her. She set her phone down and tried to forget, until it buzzed at 9 p.m.
Lena, I'm sorry.
I can't do this. You're wonderful, but it's too soon. I thought I was ready. I'm not. The words hit like ice water. She read it again and again, the glow of the screen reflecting the tears she didn't want to shed. Too soon. Too soon for him. Too late for her. She wanted to reply, to say she understood, but she didn't. Not really. She had opened her heart again for the first time in years, and it hurt more than she'd expected. Meanwhile, Ethan sat on his couch, head in his hands. The twins were asleep upstairs, their drawings from last night still spread across the coffee table. For smiling stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. He couldn't look at it. His chest ached with guilt. He'd felt something real with Lena, something he hadn't dared to feel since his wife. But that scared him. Loving again felt like betrayal even though he knew it wasn't. His sister called, her voice firm but gentle. "Ethan, what happened?" He sighed. "She deserves someone who's not still half a ghost." "Maybe that's exactly why you need her," she said. "Because she sees the living part of you." But Ethan didn't answer. He just whispered, "Not yet," and hung up. Back in her apartment, Lena poured a glass of wine she didn't want and scrolled through their brief text history. She wanted to hate him, but she couldn't. She understood loss too well. And somehow that made it worse. She looked out at the city lights through her window, reflections of stars that weren't really there. "Maybe I'm just meant to eat alone," she murmured. Her phone stayed silent. For a long while, the only sound was the rain beginning again outside, tapping softly against the glass, just like the night they met. And though neither of them said it aloud, both Ethan and Lena fell asleep wondering the same thing. Why does something that feels so right hurt this much? Have you ever walked away from someone because your heart wasn't ready, even though part of you wanted to stay? What happened after? Share your story below. Days passed, then a week, then two. Lena tried to throw herself into work, into friends, into anything that wasn't him. But no matter what she did, that night replayed in her mind. The laughter, the twins, the quiet peace she'd almost believed in. Every time she passed Café Viella, her chest tightened. The empty table by the window mocked her. Her best friend, Mara, noticed the change. "You're not over him," she said one night over wine. Lena sighed. "How can I be? I barely knew him, but it felt real." Mara leaned forward. "Then maybe it was. Maybe he's just scared." "Scared people leave," Lena murmured. "They always do." Mara reached out, covering her hand. "Maybe. But sometimes they come back, if you leave the light on." Lena smiled faintly, but the ache stayed. Across town, Ethan was unraveling. His boys asked about Miss Lena every night before bed. "Did she get home safe? Can we see her again? Daddy, why are you sad when you talk about her?" He tried to answer, but every reply felt like a lie. He told himself he'd done the right thing. Protecting them, protecting himself, protecting the memory of his wife. But as he watched his sons draw pictures of the lady with the kind smile, he realized something awful. The only person who'd made them laugh like that was gone because he'd pushed her away. One night, after tucking them in, Ethan sat alone in the quiet. The house creaked with the kind of loneliness that's louder than sound. He opened his phone. Her last message was still there. "Maybe coffee again sometime?" He typed, deleted, typed again.
I'm sorry.
"I was scared. But I miss you." He didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, he looked at the photo his son had drawn, the 4 stick figures under a rainbow. This time, there was an extra hand drawn between him and Lena. That did it. He grabbed his coat. Café Viella, Lena sat alone again. It wasn't a date this time, it was just closure. She told herself she wanted to reclaim the space, to rewrite the memory. But deep down, she knew she was waiting. For what? She wasn't sure. The rain had started again, soft and persistent. She was about to leave when the door chimed. Ethan stood there, soaked, breathless, holding 2 small hands. Lena froze. Her heart stuttered. The twins were smiling up at her. "Miss Lena, Daddy said we could come say hi." Ethan swallowed hard, voice low. "I didn't plan this. I just couldn't let it end like that." Her eyes glistened. "You said you weren't ready." "I wasn't." He stepped closer. "But waiting for perfect means I'd never show up. And you—" He hesitated, voice trembling. "You made me feel like maybe I don't have to be perfect to be loved again." The cafe was quiet except for the rain. Lena stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked down at the twins, both looking up with innocent hope. Finally, she smiled, small, real, breaking through the ache. "Sit down," she said softly. "You're late." Ethan exhaled, relief flooding through him. "I know." She smiled again. "But you came. Would you have forgiven Ethan after the hurt? Do second chances heal or reopen old wounds? Comment below. Your take might hit someone's heart tonight. The cafe lights glowed soft and golden, the rain tapping gently on the windows like a rhythm only love could hear. Lena watched as Ethan helped his twins into their seats. One of them yawned, the other reached for a crayon, giggling as if they'd never skipped a beat. For a moment, it felt like the first night all over again. Except this time, the seat across from her wasn't empty. Ethan looked nervous, his hands fidgeting with his sleeves. "I don't really know what to say," he admitted. "Then don't," Lena said softly. "Just be here." He looked up and their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. A recognition, a quiet promise. The twins began to hum the same tune the cafe owner had played that first night. It made Ethan smile. "They remembered," he murmured. Lena laughed. "They have good taste." He chuckled, and then his tone shifted, gentler, more serious. "Lena, when my wife died, I thought my story ended. I thought love was something that only happens once." She listened quietly, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "But last night," he continued, voice trembling, "I realized stories don't end when people leave. They just pause, waiting for us to turn the page." Lena blinked back tears. "So why now?" "Because," he said, leaning forward, "I'm done being afraid of the next chapter." Her heart softened completely, and then one of the twins tugged on her sleeve. "Miss Lena?" She turned to him. He held up a napkin where 4 stick figures stood under a rainbow, just like the last drawing. But this time, between the 2 adults, a little heart floated above their heads. Ethan looked down at his son, smiling through a shimmer of emotion. "Guess they already wrote the next page for us." Lena laughed through her tears. "Smart kids." The cafe owner brought over a slice of cake. "On the house," he said. The boys clapped. Ethan looked at Lena. "Dessert, huh?" She said, "Every good day should end with something sweet." Lena met his gaze. "Then let's make this one count." They shared the cake, the boys giggling between them, and for the first time it didn't feel like 2 broken hearts holding on. It felt like one whole moment. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The city was quiet, washed clean. Ethan reached across the table and took Lena's hand. Not tentative, not unsure, just real. "Thank you," he whispered, "for waiting long enough for me to show up." She squeezed his hand gently. "You weren't late, Ethan. You were right on time." The twins smiled, leaning against their dad, eyes heavy with sleep. The warmth of the cafe, the hum of soft music, the laughter still caught in the air. It all blended into something that felt like peace. And as Lena looked at the man across from her, the one who'd once been too afraid to love, she realized something she'd never dared to believe before. Sometimes love doesn't arrive early, or when we want it most. It comes exactly when our hearts are ready to open the door. Do you believe love has perfect timing, or do we create the moment ourselves? Drop your thoughts below. Your story might remind someone that it's never too late. Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.